Hey there, this is Cole. This is the last episode of the Dark Souls 3 season for now, and also this is one of the last episodes of the year. I believe it comes out on Christmas Day of 2016. This is a time to look back and be grateful and all of that sappy stuff. Want to say thank you to everybody who has backed us on Patreon. Over the course of 2016, we've started 3 new shows, Monster and My Podcast, Days of Future Cast, and Radio Free Midworld, all of which are tremendously fun and only possible because enough of you have gone to the Patreon page and given us a couple of bucks, or sometimes a lot, sometimes many couples of bucks. And we have so much more in store for 2017. This show isn't going anywhere. It's just changing for a bit until we figure out what From's next move is. But if you want to continue supporting this show and the network and make more cool stuff happen, go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. That is patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Now let's wrap this up.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
I took the mantle of Lord of Cinder of mine own volition. I speak these words with pride. Choose thy fate alone. Seize it with thine own hands. All the more should thy fate entail such foul betrayal.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is the amalgamated favorite.
And this week, we are by ourselves here talking about the endgame of Dark Souls 3. This season drawing to a close before it embers back up again with the second DLC. This episode will be kind of a clearinghouse of some NPCs that we haven't talked about, and kind of go into what's involved in ending this game, and talking about the final boss. Obviously, Gary,
Yeah,
I'm rambling.
fine.
Save me.
No, like final boss and just kind of final thoughts and wrap ups and how this kind of ends. And as is our tradition, we're doing it alone because we all die alone. And I consider doing this with you to be alone.
Okay, cool. I was about to look sideways at that, but
no, I don't know what it means. I could see a good interpretation and a bad interpretation of it. Like it's either, remarkable trust or incredible insignificance, and I don't want to put a pin in either one. But so it has been a long, in many ways, kind of stressful season of the show, and I'm looking forward to I've been looking forward to recording this.
Yeah.
And it's I'm also looking for the nice thing, having this like couple month break or however long until the DLC comes out is going to be awesome because I'm gonna have enough time to really look forward to it.
Yeah.
I do want to, as much as I didn't like Ashes of Ariandel very much. I'm really looking forward to the second one, just because it'll have been enough time to where it's like, hey. So some more souls will be good.
Yeah, there'll be some absence for that fondness to fill, Yeah.
The standard disclaimer of games is an evolving medium means that everything we say today, any conclusions we draw, are immutable. So even so much so that things could get patched and changed. So we don't actually know what the future holds, and some of these things, especially with the endings, one of the big bummers of one of the endings is that I don't know. We don't know what a lot of the endings mean. I feel like they're enigmatic to kind of to a fault, and some of those questions might be answered in the DLC. So this might become instantly a dated relic. But
yeah, so let's date it. First off, Merry Christmas. You're listening to this. Comes out on the 25th. Happy holidays. Yeah, if you celebrate any of that. Yeah. Second off, we're referring to this game as it exists on December the 15th of 2016.
Yes. It's hard to imagine that Dark Souls 3 is going to get better in 2017 when nothing will get better in 2017. So, why would Dark Souls 3 be the exception? Yeah. But we shall see.
Could it get any worse? Not Dark Souls 3, but anything else from 2016? Yeah.
Incredibly, very much so.
Yeah, there's always more. It's always worse.
I was talking to somebody and I was just like, oh, who's still going to die? Because everyone's acting like, this is just happen all the time. Right. Where oh, like the people you were into them when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
They were 30 to 40 years older than you because they were doing their best work, and now they're dying because you're 30 to 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, other people are going out, like Alan Alda's probably not got tons of time. Then we're gonna get a surprise dark horse one like Tom Hanks. Something like that's gonna. Like something like that's gonna happen because this isn't gonna stop because it never has stopped. It will forever be.
Yeah, and it's only. I mean, like that's only gonna get worse. Yeah. Because guess what? Right now it's celebrities. Pretty soon it's gonna be the people you know and love. Like.
Yeah, it sucks. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't suck, but just kind of the like, man, 2016 did it all. No, this is just time, and this is what happened. So
yeah, it's time and your circle. The people you socialize with. And a lot of people being really upset about Alan Thicke. I was
very surprised by that.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's certain people who, and this isn't abject suffering, so we don't have to go too far into this, but like, there's an element of performative grief, I feel like, on social media. Like, and for the most part, I feel like, don't tell somebody how to grieve.
Yeah.
I do think that there are people who like feel an obligation on social media to like, I need to mark this passing.
Yeah. Wow. We lost another great one today. Yep. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Whether you actually like are that touched by it or not,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes exhausting when it's like everybody, every single person who dies, like, it's, and Alan Thicke is the very definition of somebody I have a hard time thinking anybody is that invested in.
Yeah.
Like, it's very sad. Like, I'm sad for his family, all these things, but it doesn't, it's just very hard for me to imagine this many people have a personal relationship with Alan fucking Thicke. Like, it's just very, very strange to me.
Yep. It's not this year. It's us.
Yeah. It's exactly. So with that out of the way,
that thing we had to do.
Yeah. This is taking out the trash. It's time to round up some NPCs we missed. A lot of NPCs you could do kind of at any time. And you do little parts of them between bosses.
Yeah.
So it would have, rather than just covering them step by step as we went, some things kind of got saved for the end here.
Yes. And some of these we may have mentioned a little bit, but I want to make sure that we put a pin in them. I just kind of went through the big list of NPCs and, found people that I didn't feel like we gave their due. So starting off with Grey Rat, the thief that we first meet on the High Wall of Lothric, and eventually, send him out on these little scavenger missions to get stuff. Eventually you can send him to Lothric Castle. Like that's the final place where you can send him. And previously it was possible to send him into a place and then have him be rescued by somebody else, by Patches. But nobody
or potentially Sigurd.
Yes, yeah.
Or Patches dressed up as Sigurd. We're not totally sure, but
yep, we can never be certain. Who can tell if Sigurd is actually if there's a body in that armor?
Oh man,
yeah.
I didn't even think about that. The ending of this game introduces the kind of animuses and spirits and stuff that had never been a thing in the series before, but now are. So maybe it could just be an animate armor. That's the spirit of all the Siegs come before.
Yeah. But in this case, he dies. Grey Rat dies on the roof of the Grand Archives, and Patches will go and bring back a spell or a miracle. I forget exactly which one, but yeah, like you'll go and get his ashes, and that is the end of this poor, helpful little kind of slave thief guy.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot to his story, but there's a little bit there if you squint. Like he starts sending himself on these missions after he loses his Loretta.
Yeah, his
after you report that Loretta is dead, so probably a romance, possibly a family member.
Yep.
We're not sure. But after that, he's just like, hey, I'm your man. Send me out, coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to play. And he just, the tragedy of this is he keeps doing it until eventually. So it's kind of dual purposes. Like I kind of like this quest line. Like one, he's sending himself into suicide missions. Two, it, does a job of showing exactly how dangerous Lothric is.
Yeah.
And kind of expresses the increasing danger of the world in kind of a subtle way.
Right.
He has no problem coming back from the village. Little bit tricky for Erithil. You're fucked if you go to Lothric Castle, no matter what.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's Grey Rat. And the only way to save him is just not to talk to him, and it's unsatisfying. He just, you talk to him, he's like, put me in, coach. Like, and so he's an eternity of rooting.
I need a new purpose after I lost my old one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he doesn't like do. I feel like that. So one of the things in this like NPC section, and I've complained about this before, but I want to put it out here, is like one of the things that disappoints me about the NPCs in Dark Souls 3 is that they're all kind of remixes of previous NPCs, and that whole idea of like taking away someone's purpose being an act of violence is so masterfully done in the Siegmeyer quest. I would have liked to have seen it expressed here too, where like if you don't let him go, something bad happens as well.
Yeah, like he turns on you, like
he goes crazy, or here he goes, well, if you're not gonna, then what use am I, or something like that. I don't know, but something where he it actually underlined that theme rather than putting him in a weird like Dark Souls 3 NPC stasis where he just says the 2 lines over and over.
Yeah.
But still pretty good. Yuria, who we last dealt with in the marriage quest to Henri in the tomb and the like, at some point she also orders you to kill Orbeck of Venheim, who is our mage trainer. Yeah. This is pretty strange. Like she says, go kill him because he might become the Lord of Hollows. There's not a lot else to suggest that he is a Lord of Hollows.
I mean, aside from him being a powerful mage and also kind of a dick.
Yeah. But being a powerful mage, like, we're not powerful mages.
Right.
So you can go kill him and then give his remains to her, and she gives you the I think the Morian blade.
Yeah.
You can also if you keep him alive, and give him all of the sorcery tomes, he eventually will end up dead on a desk in the Grand Archives.
Yeah.
And you can give her those ashes, and you'll also get the Morian blade.
Yes. That crazy thorned blade that's like a mimic of one of the towers in Londor. Yeah. Ringfinger Leonard. This is a person, kind of a creepy PvP guy wearing a tricorn hat with a silver mask. We talked about him way back at the High Wall of Lothric. He will continue kind of reappearing in Firelink, kind of giving you, like escalating, like, hey, go kill, just go out and invade, and he will, recognize you as kind of a kindred spirit a little bit if you join the Rosaria's Fingers covenant. But there's this awesome line like, oh, really there's nothing to this. You could be like, what's it, Yellowheart or whatever his name is.
Yellowfinger, which is Heisel.
Yeah, Yellowfinger Heisel, and think that there's camaraderie, but, there's nothing really binding us together. Just go out and get tongues. Get tongues every day.
Yeah. So this, this kind of continues, and we don't really learn. So what happens eventually is Rosaria dies.
Right.
And Rosario, when she dies, she drops where at her corpse there's a black eye orb. It should be noted that this does not cut you off from anything. Like, you can still do everything with Rosaria.
Right.
But if you want to pursue this quest line, you can take the black eye orb to Guinevere's chamber, which lets you invade Leonard and kind of get the end of this kind of story.
A little bit like this, his obsession with not just like protecting Rosaria, but like preserving her, almost like implying you did something to defile her body and now you want to defile her soul or something like that.
It's it feels a little bit like he thinks we're being skeevy almost.
Yeah.
There's something like it wasn't enough to defile her. And again, the way that all of these are remixes, it's supposed to recall specifically Lautrec. Yep. And Lautrec's love of his goddess.
Fina,
the whole, Fina, again with when he fights with his Shotel. So that is the idea. That's that's what it's evoking. I didn't do shit. Like, I don't know what what you're talking about, but
I thought you killed her.
Yeah, I respect twice. So if that's a problem for you, it's not my fault they nerfed luck. Like, so I mean that's essentially it. Once you kill him, we learn a little bit about his backstory. He was somebody like a noble who was horribly burned and originally probably sought out Rosaria to get reborn, but then once he met her, decided not to and become her knight instead.
Right.
And Rosaria, this is, I think we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Rosaria. This is, kind of exhibit C in the thinking that Rosaria is probably Guinevere, kind of reborn, even though, because when we get her soul, you can make Bountiful Sunlight, which is a Princess Guard miracle from Dark Souls 1. So that seems to make sense. There's no kind of end to that sentence. Like, okay, like the queen, the queen then reborn. Like it's maybe like the queen went into to kind of hiding. It's almost like a witness protection thing.
Yeah.
To go hang out with the slugs in the Cathedral of the Deep. But there's that ball doesn't get picked up and ran with. The idea of Guinevere, Rosaria, kind of allying with the Cathedral of the Deep,
right?
Or the the Deacons of the Deep or Aldrich or any associated parties. So it feels to me a little bit like a nipped thread.
Yeah, it's bizarre that she's in the Cathedral of the Deep. It almost feels like she's just misplaced there or out of place. I don't know what that would be. Like maybe just trying to keep her away. Okay, so maybe Sullivan was trying to keep her away from Aldrich and Gwendolyn, possibly.
Sure. So she can, even though there's signs of it being assaulted as well.
Yeah.
Or like bedchambers with the kind of spikes having spiked up the slug.
Yeah.
And at the end, so I don't have an answer for that. I don't. That's not a complete sentence to me.
Right.
But Leonard does end up becoming a complete sentence as just somebody who kind of gets insanely jealous of anyone tarrying with God.
It's a little bit Alfred too.
Yeah, a little bit Alfred, a little bit Lautrec, just a little bit of DNA from things that had come previous.
Right.
And then Cirrus, we last talked about her in Irithyll, where you go into her world to help her fight Creighton.
Right.
This is my least favorite quest signaling in the game.
Yeah.
Is this green moss bit.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit previously when we were talking about. No, it was the when we're talking about. See, I'm already forgetting the names. That's so terrible. Talking about Hawkwood, and just kind of items that tell you to go elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So the grandma, and spoiler, this is probably Cirrus's grandma, is the firekeeper. Old lady.
The
old hag
shrine maiden. Shrine maiden. Yeah.
Yeah. Has this green moss that has a kind of special message on it that says she's visiting grandfather, who happens to be Holy Knight Hodrick,
the covenant leader for the Mound Makers.
Yes. So you have to go there to again get sucked into her world and fight Hodrick. Right. Who is her grandfather, who she's putting out of his misery. Yeah,
and all of his sunset gear kind of implies like, yes, he was a maniac on the battlefield, and eventually he just started like living into being this mad ghoul who would attack friend and foe alike.
Yes, we still don't know very much about the Sunless Realms as a thing. Like after you do this fight, and this fight is very hard. Have you done this?
Yeah, it's it is a real SOB.
Yeah, it sucks. I think it's very hard because you have to keep Cirrus alive, and she can heal, but she's not smart.
Right.
So I found this very tricky.
Yeah, Hodrick, he seems a touch more aggressive than a lot of other NPC fights too.
Yeah, he's super aggro. Once you kill her, she will kind of move over to his grave in Firelink, and then you can summon her or once you kill him, you can summon her for the two princes. Mm-hmm. But and then she just kind of that's kind of it.
And then she dies. You just find
she dies.
Find her stuff and a little bit more of Hodrick's gear over by the tombstone. Yeah.
Yeah. So you find that talisman there. Yeah. So okay, like I don't know enough about the Sunless Realms. Like people were saying, oh, that's Londor.
We already have Londor.
We have Londor. Yeah. It's got some connections to Mira. Because of Creighton and because of Hodrick's shield.
Yeah.
Which looks like the Mira shield. So it's possible this is Mira.
I can see that.
Sure. Like, I mean, it doesn't, we don't know very much about Mira other than that.
Yeah, it doesn't change too much of anything, but at the very least, it puts it somewhere.
Yeah. It's a real Pontiff Sullivan's mom.
Yeah.
Lore, or like Pontiff Sullivan's birthplace.
Yeah.
Kind of thing where it's an unimportant detail as opposed to a context kind of rich detail.
Yeah.
But that ends up being Cirrus, and it's to me it's a very frustrating quest line because of that grass moss thing, and just kind of knowing to randomly go back to there's grass moss and grandfather. That must mean going back to this area I have no reason to backtrack to.
Yeah. Well, he specifically the note says I will be in the Pit of Hollows is what where she's going to.
Yeah. Which is also worth noting that I guess you can't miss it. But you wouldn't have the association with Hodrick there if you didn't find him
right
before
you collapsed the roof.
Yeah, before you destroyed him in an avalanche.
Yeah, and Cirrus, kind of along with Sigvard, is just a very finicky quest, and also
Yes.
one of a very rare quest that you can just fail outright by allying with a covenant.
Yeah, with the ring with Leonard. So you can do them both. The way you do it is you do Cirrus's entirely, and then you just finish Ring Fingers right there at the end.
Yeah.
Which means, and the way to cut it off is by giving a pale tongue to Rosaria.
Yeah.
As a covenant thing. It used to be at all.
Yep.
And that used to break the quest. They patched it now to where it's if you join the covenant and give her a try to level up in the covenant, you lose. You can still respec.
That's good.
Prior to that, it was pretty shitty. I felt like punishing this gameplay mechanic with like a story, consequence was kind of bad.
Yeah.
It's gotten better.
Good. And that's really all there is to say about Cirrus. Just try not to lose her quest, at least until they get that catfall ring. But
yeah, which is great. It's one of the best rings. Yeah. We already talked about Irina. I think we've pretty much covered everybody else.
Yeah.
And I don't need to go into too many generalities about that. I think that the Dark Souls 3 quest lines are a little too fiddly. And I'm disappointed that they're all remixes, but some of them are genuinely pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I think Hawkwood is pretty good. I like Arena. Grey Rat I think is fine. Patches is of course a miracle. Sigurd is below reproach. So that's pretty much where I land on it.
Yeah, there's some stuff to recommend it. Just some genuinely affecting stuff.
And nobody who's listening to this hasn't played the game, but if I had it to do over again, rather than worrying about a spoiler, I would just use an NPC guide.
Yep.
Because the spoilers you're getting, it's not, to me, in my mind, it wasn't fun figuring out these steps.
Yeah.
It was just a stressor, and it was like, oh, if I fuck this up, I have to beat the game and then come back to see it.
Yeah.
Or do the ultimate cheat code and look it up on YouTube. But I would, and the spoiler things where it's just like, go to this place at this time are not meaningful spoilers. So next time a Dark Souls game comes out, or a game, if there is a Souls-like or whatever, I try to go in as spoiler free as possible, which I still want to do for areas and bosses and stuff, but getting a non-spoiler text only NPC guide might be worth it if they're going to kind of keep up this philosophy of how they integrate them into the game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have lost anything if I'd done that is my point.
Yep. No, I agree. It's one of those things. I want more content, not less. And you don't want to have that be cut off. So I would very much want to put myself in that same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, last time we have finally we have all of the lords, the ashes of all the lords. So once you have all 4 of them, which will happen after you kill, the 2 princes have to be the last one.
Right.
Once you have killed the 2 princes, you can go to Firelink and place them all on the thrones there.
Yeah. And this is a pretty cool kind of segment here, right? Where, you place all of them on there, Ludleth, of course, is sitting there. I was about to say kicking his feet, but he don't have feet.
He's a skink.
He's a what?
Skink.
Oh, those weird lizards?
Yeah, without feet.
Oh, that's weird. That's a weird pull.
Yeah, man. Well, he's essentially like a skink.
Yeah.
He's got a real skink body. He's skink up top and skink up bottom. Little Domino's party skink.
But so you've placed them again. We've been going about this grim errand of going out these lords to remain intransigent as they sit out there. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to sit on there. So, well, God damn it, I'm going to put your ashes there, and something is going to burn. There has to be somebody, something for me to inherit, right? And so there's dialogue here that will cut in from the Firekeeper.
The 5 lords sit their 5 thrones, all thanks to thee, most worthy of lords. Ashen One, with the lords as thy witness, bend thy knee afore the bonfire's coiled sword, and let the lords' embers acknowledge thee as their true heir, a true lord, fit to link the fire.
And then this begins a pretty cool cutscene, actually, of the ashes igniting anew, and then Lilith sitting there, little burning skink, I guess, on fire as well.
My Metal Gear Solid rank. Little burning skink.
Burning, and like this fuels a small little ember in the firekeeper's hand that she kind of anoints you with.
Let him grant death to the old gods of Lordran, deliverers of the first flame.
Yes, and somehow this allows you to. So this is all. It's kind of interesting where this is at in the cosmology, because in the previous games, the kind of gatekeeping was all just to essentially literally open a gate. Right. Like you needed something to open Firelink, but once you were there, you could go fight Gwen and get to the flame. It was just a question of getting to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
In Dark Souls 2, again, it was a question of getting to the actual throne.
Right. Getting the ring that would open up the the door to the Throne of Want. And Demon Soul is busting open the bottom of the Nexus.
Yes, yeah, which was, and that was actually closer than this a little bit, just in that like you were busting open the bottom of the Nexus, but there was like an element of ritual, like it felt like a magical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were killing the lords to weaken this barrier. Here this is like this huge ritual in the intervening centuries that has been kind of made where you have to have this kind of power or borrow this power to get to Firelink.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting how much of that is real, I guess, or whether that is part of this. One of the things that Dark Souls 3 tries to do is like show that these rituals have kind of evolved and gotten very complicated, so much so that there are these cultures around it.
There are these cultures, there's a hierarchy. Again, you can just kind of take Lords of Cinder as just a proper noun and not think of it, but these are the people who link the fire, and they basically after this there are going to be 6 that need to do this, again building into this theme that it's not a cycle, it's a spiral, right?
Yeah, well, more than 6, because we don't
well, yeah, I suppose,
yeah, like who knows, like nigh infinite nigh infinite versions of them.
I was just thinking about adding your PC onto the
yeah, you're making things worse, which we'll get to when we get to the endings.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've done this, lit her grant to the old gods of Lordran, deliverers of the first flame. You can now use the bonfire to teleport to Firelink. Yeah, but like the flameless, crazy trailer for Doctor Strange version of Firelink.
Yeah, I really dig this.
This is awesome.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, like when they say that time and space are converging, obviously we see that out in the world, these different kingdoms kind of neighboring each other now when they didn't. This is like the dream logic apotheosis of that very idea. Like in all these places, quests to move further, they have like piled up and folded over the world just to kind of like form this kind of surround for the not just Firelink, but the kiln, this source of the flame.
Previous to this, that kind of the lands are converging felt a little bit like a band-aid, right? Like the idea was, the lands are converging, so that kind of explains some kind of like weird proximities, in these areas we've already trucked with.
Yeah.
But now this is it being real and literal.
Yeah. And it also gives a little bit new meaning to the strange, almost nonsensical catchphrase in this. So it is the ash seeketh ember. Well, if you consider that the entire world is, basically recently guttered out and is more ash than not, as we saw even in that opening, of the pilgrims walking across the blasted ashen landscape. The entire world is ash and they're seeking the ember. Here, again, this guttering flame in the center. It's not just these cinders coming in and saying, hey, look at me, or unkindled rather, but the actual world itself. Again, it is taking this symbolic thing and making it literal in a nice and surreal way.
Like one thing about that I think about is that like if you think about the relationship between ash and ember is a previous state of ash. So this idea of kind of contracting, like an ember will kind of burn and spread out, and you can kind of think of it kind of sucking up or consolidating as part of that, and this is a really cool metaphor for Ash seeking ember, Ash kind of trying to become an ember, trying to, gravitating towards a middle point here, because, we show up in a darkened version of Firelink. Not the other one.
And there might be a third. There's a weird teleport that happens like right away.
Yeah. So as you head out, and we get into so we head out. The eclipse is here in the sky, but it's bleeding light.
Yeah, that light or flame or something like that. And the way that they frame that up when you're walking out the entryway is staggering, actually.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think they were going to be able to surprise me again with another awesome skybox or with another eclipse like that. But, here we have not just this symbol of the dark sign, but this dark sign that is kind of like losing even more of its light, that is bleeding, spreading it out. Like, it just looks so fucking malignant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool looking. Like, this whole section looks great.
Yeah.
So when you use the bonfire here, we get a loading screen, and you wake up on the kiln path. And this is where, specifically the Doctor Strange trailer is what I was referring to, or that idea of the ashes kind of contracting. Because this kiln path, you step outside and you see what looks like, Anor Londo, but folded in on itself.
Yeah.
Parts of it are sideways, parts of it are collapsing, parts of it are, like space is literally kind of crumbling around it.
Yeah, like towers are, perpendicular and pointing toward you. They are parallel to the ground as they are kind of like curling up toward this. It is really good, and it's up there. I like the original Kindle of the First Flame for like color and atmosphere, but like architecturally, it's take.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. But think about the beach at the end of Demon Souls. That's another final area that we kind of praised for its aesthetic, kind of beauty. Again, like that is a different kind of end of the world that we're seeing in that too. I think this is up there with that aesthetically. Both of them work for me very, very well.
This is what we go to isn't for me.
Right.
But this very part, this feels like this is writing a check that the game doesn't cash a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I saw this and I was like, oh shit, like, am I going there? And like literal, like, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, am I going to explore like this version of this familiar place that is literally turned on its side and crumbled together? And I was just like, that is the coolest fucking way to end this. I am so excited about that. Like, as a thing, I was so into it.
But no, you're gonna have to walk the other direction. I didn't even think about going into it. I don't know why that idea didn't occur to me.
I was walking, I knew you go the other direction, but I thought it would loop around.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm not an idiot. Like, I was quickly divested of this when I looked over to the right and saw that there wasn't a path. But that was my first thought, was like, oh, it's literally, this is going to be the end. And it felt like a cool way to end it on a meaningful place, but literally kind of twisted and I thought it was very cool.
Yep.
And
it would have been an architectural callback, which is something we're kind of down with.
Like, in a very cool way.
Yeah.
Like, here's this architecture, even if it had just used the literal geography of it, but it made it on its side. Like, imagine traversing one of those spiral staircases.
Yeah.
Where you walk up the little stairs and you have to jump down onto the next set of stairs and keep doing that in kind of a corkscrew.
Yeah. You're playing
to make it across.
You ever play the floor is the ceiling?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, though, you go up this kind of bland, ashy path to the right.
No.
And I don't want to undersell this because it's very neat. You just don't do anything with it.
Right. And you're kind of like rising toward the eclipse. Like, it's very much in view behind your ultimate goal, which is kind of obscured by, a gigantic fog gate.
Yes. So, this is the boss. There are no NPC helpers here if you're not pursuing Lord of Hollows.
Right.
So if you're on good terms with Yuria, if you're pursuing Lord of Hollows, you can summon her.
Mm-hmm.
And you can summon the Londor Pale Shade, our old buddy.
Yeah.
For like the last boss of the game, which is the Soul of Cinder.
So you pass through the fog gate and you step into something that looks, suspiciously is so loaded. To me, it looks a lot like the field at the end of Bloodborne. It
does.
Yeah. Has a gigantic bonfire in the middle of it. And, it's a very wide open arena. It's rolling a little bit with hills. And apparently no real flame has been here for a long time because there are flowers that are kind of growing out of the ash that make up the soil.
Yeah, and there's a dumb zombie in the middle. You fight the big faceless dumb zombie.
It's not a dumb zombie. It's an empty suit of armor.
Yeah. You fight the. I mean, we'll talk about this thing we'll talk about it as a fight and a lore thing. But if anyone was expecting this not to I hate this boss a lot, and I'm so it's not a redemption for me as far as that goes. It's a fine fight.
Yeah,
this is a pretty good fight.
This fight works for me. It works very well mechanically for me. I think it is. Yeah. It is a cool idea. Just to make you fight this enemy who is going to rotate through a bunch of different movesets. It does a little bit of what we kind of called a missed opportunity in Dark Souls 1. That they talked about. Oh, we wanted Gwyn to be a final exam for the for the player, but ultimately it ended up being a test. Do you know how to parry or not? This does that. This will ask you, hey, can you deal with these different movesets, these different magics that it's going to throw at you? This is a Swiss Army man, and not the kind who farts you across the ocean.
It's but what they stumbled on with Gwyn is 1,000 times better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It wasn't it's a test of how you can parry, but it's also, you don't have to, and he's not hard and he's sad and stuff. Gwyn, there's a point to Gwyn.
Yeah.
This they opted in Dark Souls 3 fashion to make a challenge. This guy is not the most challenging boss in the game, but he's up there. I would say he's Pontiff, somewhere around Pontiff, below Nameless King. Mm-hmm. But one of the so they opted to just go we need to have the ultimate challenge at the end of this thing, as opposed to trying to sell the emotional core of the game, which is what Gwyn does. Yeah. And then later in the second half of this, where it tries to borrow some of Gwyn, I feel is literally repulsive.
Yeah. So let's walk through these phases and kind of respond to them, because the first phase, it's just a big dumb night fight a little bit.
Yeah.
He has a fire weapon. He has he combos a lot, and there's a little bit of the infinite stamina problem, but it's not as bad as the Nameless King. I would agree. This is good, and he's also one thing that's of note is that he's not parryable as well. Right. So it seems like he's going to be. That took me a few tries to figure that out. Yeah. You cannot parry him, but he's just kind of he's a knight. It's a dual fight. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, and this is all of these are really just about learning these different patterns and kind of finding the safe points. Mm-hmm. The reason why it is better than Nameless King, to my mind, or better than Frida, is that he has too much stamina. There's one multi-hit combo thing I really hate during the second phase. Yeah. But for the most part, there are opportunities. You're learning all these different phases, but each phase has 2, 3 or 4 moves as opposed to a full move set. Yeah, it's it definitely it feels dramatic. Again, I want there to be this push and pull, and when he was now he's throwing sorceries at me, or now he's doing this kind of stuff, that moment of catching up and adapting again, and then getting back on my feet. That is a really satisfying kind of arc for this fight.
The second phase, he becomes a mage, essentially. Or the second phase, second kind of moveset, I guess, because he's got 2 phases and then 4 movesets.
Right.
Starts throwing sorceries. He also has the sorcery great sword attack, so he's dangerous up close. He's real light on the trigger finger for the homing soul missiles.
Oh yeah, he will spam that as much as he can.
Yeah. To make it disincentivize you being close, because that's how you deal with this phase.
Yeah. Another one of these is Curved Sword, which also has him throwing around more pyromancies than usual.
Yeah.
And he's incredibly deadly up close, especially if you get caught off guard by combustion on that. That for some reason wasn't telegraphed enough for me, so I died to that a couple of times.
You will also power within during this phase. So this is the Pyromancer phase, and the reason why it's a curved sword is because of Quelaag's Fairy Sword, essentially.
Yeah.
And then his final phase is the Miracle build, Miracle and Lance.
Yeah.
Where he starts hurling lightning, and doing Lance charges.
Yeah. I love that attack where he throws the big spear, but then it shoots up into the sky, and then the homing ones drop down on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like a reprise of Eldritch, a little bit like avoiding that felt like a really cool dramatic moment.
There's a spell that we can get that does something very similar to that too, which is kind of neat. But he kind of goes through those 4 things. I've read mixed reports. Some people have said the first time you run into him, he goes in that order every time.
Mm-hmm.
But it might get broken if you bring summons.
Maybe.
And it gets broken if you come in later times, and it becomes kind of random.
Mm-hmm. But what he's doing there is, or do we want to talk about that lore for this bit before we get to the other thing?
Yeah, because there's a... So we can't really talk about it without talking about kind of the whole... the whole thing. It makes sense to kind of get into all of it.
Yeah, well, this will segue into it nicely. What we're doing here is we're fighting different builds, essentially, that other people, other players possibly would have gone through when they linked the fire themselves. So you're fighting what thematically is supposed to be different iterations of previous, Dark Souls protagonists, suffering their ultimate fate after having linked the fire.
Yes. Yep. That's it. It's a little bit like, so this different like switching between elements thing. The first comparison I had to it that I didn't really like was that it felt like the end boss of BioShock, where he just like switches elemental modes over and over. It's very gamey to me in a way that Souls tend not to be. It's very gamey, and it's very and I we just had Dave on, so like there is a Duckfeed anime piece of chord going on, and I'm not trying to saber rattle at it, but it feels very anime-y to me.
Yeah,
like that. Like I'm going to take these different elemental forms. Feels like an anime boss. And then when he starts doing the juggle attacks, like getting literally juggled in the air, feels very anime to me as well.
Oh, that never popped for me. I never got juggled by him.
You never got juggled?
Is that the 5-hit combo thing?
He does it a lot in the second phase, or he does it to me at least.
Yeah, and it never got me. Weird.
Yeah, he does a long juggle attack that if you're not kind of topped off can one shot you.
Yeah.
And it's very silly to see my character like juggled up in the air like a Devil May Cry game.
Yeah.
In the middle of grounded Souls.
Yeah, that's a little bit goofy.
It's extremely goofy.
Yeah.
So like I have a very hard time taking this guy seriously.
Yeah.
Even in the first phase before it gets egregious to me.
I would be more in your camp on that, like finding that to be especially egregious. Not the juggling thing is really dumb. The fact that the different elements come with the attendant movesets that we would have found on previous NPCs, or that would have kind of complemented those previous just complemented those elements. And the fact that his moveset changes with that, like it's a little bit more comprehensive than just and now I will shoot you with a red beam.
Now I have lightning powers.
Yeah, now I have a red beam instead of a blue beam. Yeah,
it is a little bit more complicated than that, but that was the first thing that it reminded me of. So this is an amalgamation of everyone, which means every single time that we've joked about Solaire being the end boss of the game, it's true. Yep. Because in canon, Word of God, Solaire linked the fire. Everyone who has ever linked the fire is part of this boss. Solaire is at least in part the end boss of Dark Souls 3. Never in my wildest imagination would I have thought that was true. Like we were not trying to spoil anything. I was just like, oh, like it's gonna be Mecha Solaire, ha ha ha. Nope, it's actually Solaire's in there.
Yep, it's Solaire, and it's an empty suit of armor. So it kind of is Mecha Solaire.
It's amazing, like it's literally amazing. Like, that's the thing. So the first phase is actually pretty easy,
right?
And it's not easy like in the Gwyn way, or like meaningful easy. Like
it's not a mercy killing. Yeah.
So I knew there was gonna be a second phase here. So he kind of he goes through a second phase. He charges up for a huge AOE to do this, and then becomes Gwyn essentially.
not
like he's not
physically.
He's not
like he doesn't just like sprout a huge beard.
That's haul ass. The Dark Souls 1. He doesn't do that, but he takes on Gwyn's moveset largely.
Yes.
The kick, the grab.
The lightning spear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which he had before, but he does it's like slightly different now.
Yeah.
And it's not precisely Gwyn's moveset. Obviously, you can't parry him, but
Right. And that was my undoing when I got to this, because like when you see the kick and obviously when you hear the music, which kicked in, and probably made everybody salivate from Pavlovian conditioning, which is what they were counting on. Think, the way to do this is going to be to parry him, like, haha. But no, he's learned since then.
No, you just can't, because challenge over meaning.
It's it's the second round of Punch Out,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is like there's nothing like he's a undead kind of. When I say zombie, when I'm saying he's a dumb zombie, like. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily mean he's specifically a hollow. I mean he's an entity without character.
Oh yeah.
So the idea of him learning is more credit than I want to give it. To me, it just felt like From wanted to have a hard fight instead of a fight where they made a point mechanically.
Yeah, I was being glib.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's another kind of difficult duel.
Yeah.
Like,
and the trick is you have to save enough Estus through the first phase.
Yeah.
To get through it. This is not, this is somewhere in the middle of multi-phase boss fights for me as far as egregiousness. Like it's no free day, but it's.
I had forgotten that he just straight up recharges his health bar. Halfway through.
I still would have preferred that not happen. I feel like that's demoralizing and not fun, but it's not. He doesn't have so much HP, and he's not so hard that it becomes like I didn't get that frustrated.
Yeah.
Fighting him. In general, I think it's a pretty good fight.
Yeah, like a lot of Dark Souls 3, it's satisfying mechanically.
It's no Gurman, like it's no Maria. Mm-hmm. It's not like there are better versions of this, but it's not bad. Yeah,
and if the difficulty sticks in your craw, this is you're going to run past a bunch of summon signs, not just NPCs. Like this is a very easily summonable fight.
Yeah, you can get through this.
Yeah.
The flavor of it drives me up the fucking wall. Like so
it's a little ghoulish that they straight up just reuse the music.
I think that's extremely ghoulish. I think that it is if the whole game, people who defend the kind of callbacks in Dark Souls 3 are that like, they're not just there to like manipulate your emotions. How do you square this? How do you justify this very naked attempt to grab your heart that happens here?
Yeah. And it's not used to any special effect aside from saying, "Hey, remember all those people who linked the fire? Well, here's the first."
Yeah,
and it's not lent. And this could all be changed by the DLC. They could lend it pathos later on. There could be more to this, but again, they paid a lot of money. A lot of plot bucks, a lot of pathos bucks for something that they didn't actually, they weren't able to afford. Right.
The ways in which, like, it's hard for me to articulate all the ways this doesn't work for me from a lore perspective. Like, the idea of there being an amalgamation, like an animus or whatever, that is made up of everyone who linked the fire, I think is fine.
Yeah.
Contrasting it with every single other end boss they've had in the series, like, bums me out to no end. Yeah. Because it's not a character. Like, you can make the argument, like, in Dark Souls 1, right? Like, this is trading on your memories of Gwyn. Like, okay, you want to bring that piss to a shit fight? Like,
yeah,
well, I have memories of Gwyn.
They're not just inviting the
well. Yeah, like,
they're not inviting the comparison. They're demanding it.
They're demanding a comparison to Gwyn, which is like, in many ways, you spend almost the entirety of Dark Souls 1 learning about Gwyn.
Yeah, you're walking through his legacy. You're seeing his rise and fall, essentially.
And he is a character. Like, he is like, oh, this person, and then when you actually face him, it's a meaningful, like, stomach drop moment.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
Yeah, it's meaningful that he's so decrepit, and that nobody's
the music
home.
Is meaningful. Yeah, the fact that he's he was this powerful thing, and now he's the shade of his former self. A minor, less successful version of that is running into Vendrick. Yep. You spend this entire time learning of his deeds. You run into him, and it's like, oh man, this is like the saddest thing I've ever seen. I'm not saying they need to do that trick specifically. Again, Real King Allant.
Yep.
Slug thing in the pit. Gurman, it's the opposite, where the entire game you think of him as as kind of disabled, being in this wheelchair, and then he stands up. And that's like the opposite kind of feeling. I feel nothing about this.
Yeah.
Like, what can you feel about the Soul of Cinder? I don't know anything about, like, I just know that it's everyone. It's like everything, therefore nothing.
Yeah, it's anonymized the forces that were once in play, right?
Yes.
It's taken it, and that it could be a statement. I don't know. This could be them playing on anticlimax intentionally. However, it's still an anticlimax.
I don't feel like it's playing in. I'm sorry. I don't feel like it's playing on anticlimax because so many people have told me that the music thing just made them think of Gwyn, and that felt good.
Yeah,
like it worked for them because they're like, oh, the feels when Gwyn's music comes on.
Like, yeah, it's good music. I have good memories of it.
Feels that easy to get to? You got to build some walls around your feels, man. Like,
harden yourself like us. Be a monster.
Yeah, like, those feels are undefended if it literally just takes 3 piano notes to get to the feels.
How about this? Dun dun dun.
Yes. There you go. Yep. It's so like it's not a, and we talk about because we do watch over fireballs as well. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how like a final encounter, like what that means and how to successfully do that. And one kind of general rule, something that never works for me, and I can't say that it's always bad, but is to have your character that you've built up as a villain be replaced with an anonymous force.
Yeah.
It's like the Final Fantasy problem. Dark Souls was not like that, and now it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like now Dark Souls, my favorite game series, has decided to Zeromus me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you thought it was, you thought the villain was going to be Lothric, who we learned this whole thing. Actually, it's Zeromus.
Right.
And Zeromus sucks. Like, Zeromus sucks so bad. Golbez is cool. Zeromus sucks.
Yeah.
It really bums me out that I don't care about this character. Like, there's nothing to killing him.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like putting down a mad dog. Like, it doesn't feel like putting something out of its misery. It doesn't feel like a final test like Gurman does.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like much to me, which is not something I was expecting.
Yeah.
From a Souls game.
I'm going to shift into defensive mode here for a moment, but I want to make sure that this is addressed. We talked about how this doesn't invite the comparison; it demands it. Something that we've heard an awful lot through this kind of stressful season is that it's unfair to criticize Dark Souls 3 so harshly in light of others, in light of other games in the series, right? Look at it on its own terms. Throughout, we've been saying like, no, like it is straight up pulling this back up and showing you how one thing is greater than the other. This, it's they don't get to have their cake and eat it too. They cannot directly lift one thing out of its context and strip away, I don't know, the things that I really liked about it, and expect me to kind of be into it because they brought us here. This is the point where we're at, and so the comparison has to be made. It has to, because that is text. It is there in the actual thing.
If it wasn't, even if I'm not comparing it to Dark Souls 1, I don't like it when games do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to fight a character at the end of a game. Mm-hmm. And somebody is typing this, or somebody has already said it to me at this point, where it's like, oh, it is very much like an Eastern idea. This idea of like there being like a force, and that happens. Like you run into that with like Princess Mononoke, and you run into that with Final Fantasies. It doesn't work for me.
No,
as a thing. And even like Final Fantasy, one of my favorite series, like the 1 through 9 are some of my favorite games that have ever been. Like, not all of them, but I love that series.
Yeah.
That part of it has never worked for me, and there's always enough outside of that to make the whole experience good.
Yeah,
that's true of this too. Mm-hmm. But this, I cared more about Gwyn than I did about Golbez.
Mm-hmm.
So this was even that comparison. Even like to me, like the same way when we did the Secret episode, like Siegmeyer is holy to me. Without to kind of, and Gwyn is kind of holy. That's, I think it's one of my favorite all-time boss fights, like ever. Like. It is so, and so there are people who are into this. Like I've read people online who are just like, oh man, Gwyn sucks because it's like it's so easy. They probably fucking love this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, they fixed it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it was intentionally broken because the character was broken because that's the point.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what the point is about this guy.
Yeah.
It plays a little bit into one of the endings, which we're going to get to in a second, but like. God, do I hate the Soul of Cinder?
Yeah.
Like,
I also don't have a lot of patience for it's an idea from a different culture kind of thing. Obviously, I respect different cultures, all of that. This is a series that hasn't done that. Like you said, they've decided to do it now, and man, I forget what I was even going to say about that. Fuck, I'm going to take that.
Well, I mean,
out.
that's a good point on its own.
Yeah.
Like it is like the precedent has not been set.
The precedent hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't been set, and it just doesn't feel like it adds anything. It feels like it's retreating to something that is that is not as universally effective.
Yeah, or just at least if that's too much, it's something that's not as effective for me.
Yeah.
Like even if it's not universally effective, like this just does is a direction to take it that does not.
It feels weaker to me.
At the very least, less unique.
Mm-hmm.
This is less of its own kind of Gwyn is kind of a brave choice. Like real King Allant is kind of a brave choice.
Mm-hmm.
This does not feel brave.
Yeah.
To me. So that sucks. So this is definitely, like we said, it's the amalgamation. This is confirmed when you get his stuff.
Yes.
His soul specifically name checks Gwyn.
Right. One of the many exalted lords who linked the first flame and manifest to defend it. Again, I don't know why they're defending it, but okay. Gwyn defended it because he didn't want you to put it out. But
yeah, this is why wouldn't this person? Well, Gwyn defended it because he had also gone hollow.
Yeah.
So that was the idea with Gwyn is you were maybe he didn't know what you were going to do, so you were a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's going if the idea is the rest of Dark Souls 3 is trying to sell us that we're so far along that it's really code red,
mm-hmm.
it's going. If this was an agent, it would want to encourage you to rekindle it.
Mm-hmm.
If it was an agent that had Gwyn's motivations, it's also just a hollow. But I don't care that this is a hollow because it was never anything else.
Yeah.
It's meaningful that Gwyn is a hollow. It's unmeaningful that the Soul of Cinder is a hollow.
Yeah.
There's a real quick too, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
I'll kick myself if I don't bring up this point. There's a part of this where it's the M boss is all of the players that we've already fought. That reminded me a little bit of MGS 5. This weird, I played those games around the same time where there was an urge to acknowledge the players in both of these series near their ends.
Yeah, and just it's a little time people of the year. We have a mirror on the cover.
Yes, exactly. And that's something that, and I will admit that this is not an objectively bad thing. It's just something I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I never need a game to tell me I'm good. I never want that to happen ever in 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So the just to have these weird series that as they get kind of near the end, they get a little sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
It feels and just it was the players who did it. Thanks players. Please don't do that to your art. That is a compromise to your art to me, and I don't like it.
Yeah, put it in the special thanks on the credits.
Yes,
and
and it didn't. I didn't like it in MGS 5. I don't like it here. It's just it's an urge that I think is kind of misguided.
Yeah.
Again, we get the rest of his kind of equipment and stuff, and it don't learn that much other than we already just kind of said.
Right. His soul can be turned into the Sunlight Spear, which again is one of the things that we see Gwyn firing off in that very first cinematic so long ago. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. We get the sword, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Firelink sword is cool, and you can get his clothing. Which just talks about it being a burnt up armor thing, essentially.
Yeah.
Being misshapen by the fire.
Yeah.
But it's no longer it's nothing more than an empty husk. So, at the end, after you beat him, he falls to his knees, and we have the fire here.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time in the series, there are 4 endings.
Yeah. One of which is just a sub-ending of the other. Yeah.
And let's go through these kind of in order and kind of chat about what they possibly mean.
Yes.
Real quick, as you have in the notes here, you don't have to do the ending.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do one of these endings that doesn't shunt you into New Game Plus right away.
Right. Which is good. You can still go around, pick up Lulu's ring, the skull ring, talking about him defeating something called the Soul Feeder, which I want to fight the Soul Feeder.
That the Abyss Dragon.
Oh yeah. So first one here, to link the flame. This is kind of pretty much the same from Dark Souls 1, except there's less agony associated. You kill the Lord of Cinder, and then walk up and light the fire at the center, and then you just kind of catch fire and sit at the fire to burn until the next one comes, until the next cycle begins. And
the one interest, the meaningful part of this is that it's a spiral rather than a cycle. When you do this in Dark Souls 1, flame fills the kiln.
Right.
Here, it's a very small fire in a very big sky.
It's a small fire that like dances up your sleeve.
Yeah, it's you're a little less. There are diminishing returns, and not only the one thing that the boss, the Soul of Cinder, kind of that amalgamation element of him. The one cool thing that it feeds into is that once you fought him, if you understand that, you decide to link the fire. You now know that whoever does it next, it will be harder because you're going to be there too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only it's taking more kind of fuel to defeat the fire every time, but we're getting less out of it every single time.
Yeah,
it is inevitably going towards darkness, which has been my more or less what I want out of these endings anyway. The frustrating thing. So this, in a weird way, out of these 4 endings, is my favorite.
Yeah.
Just because it's kind of subtle and it just inevitable. Like we've seen it before. It's a little bit unsatisfying, but it actually does say something about the cosmology.
Yeah.
In a way that I appreciate, but it's undermined by the next one.
Yeah. So it gives just a little bit more light or reinforces that theme. That we've been talking about for kind of the entire series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's invalidated by the next one, this is one of my single most frustrating pieces of writing to me in the whole game.
Yeah.
Is what happens at the end of this. So to end the fire, you have to get the eyes of the Firekeeper.
Right.
From Darkfire Link, and not that Darkfire Link. the Untented Graves.
Yeah. Darkfire Link A, not Darkfire Link 1. Yeah.
This is the 1A. This one only comes through on Tuesdays.
But you give that to her, and it kind of shows her visions of betrayal, right? Possibly linking back to Ludleth, and showing a little bit about his story. Just the idea that something terrible is going to happen to the person who can kind of sees this, looking into the darkness beyond the flame.
Yes. So her summon sign appears. You can summon her, and she kind of takes the fire, puts it in her hands, and it kind of fades in her hands.
Yep, snuffs it out.
And then there's dialogue here that I fucking hate.
The first flame quickly fades. Darkness will shortly settle. But one day, tiny flames will dance across the darkness, like embers linked by lords past.
The reason why I hate this, the idea is it's like, oh, here's the actual Age of Dark. A lot of people have been saying there hasn't been an Age of Dark prior to this. That's why the stakes matter. Mm-hmm. This to me says that there very well could have been, because the Age of Dark is just part of the cycle.
Right. So she sees the embers out there like the others who have linked the fire. Like, we're going to get down to the darkness. They do something cool here visually where they just kind of like crank back the gamma a bit. And like, there's still stuff on the screen. Like, we still see the, like the sun up there in the sky. And she sees this out there, but like, oh, the embers are still out there even in this quite near darkness. And so when we were talking about like in Dark Souls 2, the idea that maybe it existing so close to going out is its natural state. Well, this just takes it even further, closer to that. It's like an asymptotic approach to zero.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the idea that like, so it goes kind of dark, but then one day, like one day the tiny flames will dance across the darkness. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna get more fire.
Yep.
So the choice to embrace an Age of Dark in this respect is meaningless, because ultimately this whole thing will start again.
Yeah.
So which means, and since that was inevitable in the first ending, these endings are functionally the same. It's just whether you do the mercy killing or not.
There's a read on this that I kind of took. I don't know if I believe it fully, but just the idea that it wasn't the fire itself that was, kind of going out that was causing all of these problems. It was that the fire had been so artificially extended for so long that it becomes stagnant and weird and malignant. And what we needed was a fresh start. And this is one that is going to bring it back. That is like that is, there's no text for that. That is just what I read into, the idea of reaching this darkness so it can come back again.
Well, I mean, I think that's the idea, but we just did like Bastion for Watch Out for Fireballs. Like, once the light comes back, do you think that the next people who are in the Age of Fire are going to let it go peacefully? Of course not, because that means death and like it's going to end up here again.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying like that this too is part of the cycle, is not the end of it.
Yes.
Which is what we're both saying.
Yeah. So it is. I guess when it's a spiral that goes down to the center, I think this tells us like actually it will come back to full strength, and then go down to the center eventually, and then go back to full strength. We've been there before. The weirdest ending, the one that I don't understand, is the third one you have listed here.
Right.
This is a super Easter eggy kind of thing. Like, I would never not have thought to do this.
Yeah. So in the middle of this previous ending, there's a small opportunity as the Firekeeper is kneeling down to attack her. This might be the betrayal that she can see.
That she saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty brutal. You step on her head, and then you snuff out the flame in her hands. And there's a voiceover here, which I'll cut in because why not? It's the last episode of the season.
Nameless, accursed undead, unfit even to be cinder. And so it is that ash seeketh embers.
You step on her head, which is specifically a Maiden in Black Demon Souls reference. And you take the flame. It doesn't totally go out at this point. You kind of hold it and you offer it to the sky.
Right.
I have no idea what that means.
You offer it to the eclipse.
You offer it to the eclipse. Like, is this the way that it puts it out without it being able to come back? But because she, doesn't get to say the thing.
Yeah. Well, the idea is like, okay, you might be able to put it out. She is a keeper of the fire, and maybe she's the only one who can do it in the way that causes true renewal. This is the one that like fucks it up and puts it off its axis. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. But it literally ends with him, and then it plays the reason that I'm not sure about that is it plays the voiceover from the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So that this whole thing, this nameless, accursed undead, unfit even to be cinder, that's from the intro.
Oh yeah.
So there's this idea of it being, and it's not just like the same dialogue; it's the same file. So the idea is that, to me, is that this is another loop. Like if it's starting with the same way the game began.
Yeah.
But I don't know why like offering it up to the sky thing.
Yeah.
Would be what that. There's no like it feels like not that it needs, but for this to be truly satisfying, I would need to know a little bit more for this one. And then the fourth one, which like a lot of people, this is the hardest one to get. A lot of people consider it to kind of be the true ending.
Yeah. Well, it's the one that most lines up with what the next DLC is likely to be.
But the first DLC really makes me think it's that Pigment of Man thing. Like I love that. I wish that was true, but I feel like I don't have faith. So this is the usurpation of the fire.
Yes. So you have to go through Uria's quest line, kill Henri, marry, perform the marriage to his or her body.
Fuck, marry, kill.
Yep.
Henri, Uria, Soul Ascender.
7, marry, 3.
7, marry, 3, Uria. Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Cinder. Yeah. So you go about this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Homeward Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Oh.
Is like like not a shirt, terrible shirt for you, asshole, at the very least, though.
I miss my Uncle Sigmar.
I miss my Uncle Sig, yo.
When you go to link the fire, instead you collapse. There is something that has fundamentally changed in you that you cannot link it again. And when you wake up, it is a little bit like the similar ending, the Dark Lord ending. Go ahead.
More than just collapsing, you absorb the fire.
Oh,
like
shit.
You take it and it kind of goes out into your chest. So this is the idea, is like it's literally usurping the fire.
Yeah, I didn't. So you take it into yourself. You are the new kiln. Yes.
Yeah, kind of like you're grabbing the power of the flame.
Yeah.
And then when you wake up and you see everyone kneeling towards you, it's not a little bit like it's a lot like it's visually quoting to the degree that it cannot be an accident.
Right.
The Dark Lord ending from Dark Souls 1.
Yes. These except this time, instead of just being the primordial serpents who rise up to nod to you, it is their servants. It is these pitiable undead. And these two like witch people, is one of them the Firekeeper? I'm very unclear about who those two the two female figures are.
It's Yuria and the sister who isn't Frida.
Ah, shit. Okay.
Is likely. So it's the ladies with Londor. Henri will be here as well. Which is kind of interesting. Like that's a little Easter egg that if you did this whole thing, she can appear in the kind of background. So she didn't die.
Yeah. I just missed those details. Shit.
But yeah, it's okay. Like it's easy to miss. Like I didn't catch it the first time. Yeah. So they say, "Oh, gracious Lord, make Londor whole." So at this point,
this would be really cool if I knew what Londor's designs were.
Yeah. It's we know that it's run by Kath, and that's about. And Kath wants to create the Age of Dark, and is associated with the Abyss. What that means, though, at the end of this, like it doesn't. So it's like, oh, you're the Lord of Londor. Dark Souls, it doesn't feel like it would fit into the cosmology to where it's literally like, oh, you're a king and you get to rule this kingdom.
Yeah.
It's not a, I can't even think of the game series where like, oh, you win, you get to be the king.
That'd be Fable.
It's not Fable. Like that feels very weird. Like being the Lord of Londor cannot mean literally being the king of the kingdom of Londor.
Think about what Frida and her knights say to you. Like you have subjects to rule.
Yeah, which is very weird. Like it is. I feel like that still can't mean literally that. Because what a weird reward that would be for a Souls game.
Good things don't happen to kings. In this series.
Well, I'm not saying it's a weird because you'd ultimately die. I'm saying that like there's been no active kind of kings. Like I think that like long ago I might have mentioned this on the show, or if not, I was talking about it on Slack. But like a weird dream ending for me for this series would have been like if whatever you do that like breaks the cycle or whatever, and you start the Age of Man, would have been for to fade out and fade in on a populated area.
Yeah,
like you don't have to do anything with it. It's just like here's a city teeming with people, and it's like that would feel like you broke the cycle because that's not a thing that we ever see. Everything is after the fact.
Yeah,
and maybe this is them fainting towards like what actual Londor would be. It's hard for me to think that's a straight up. Like, oh, here's your plot of land you get to own now in the kingdom ruled by the serpent Kath.
Yeah, that is populated by people who are so afraid of the abyss that they walk away from it with rocks on their back so that they can't become beds for it. Yeah,
it doesn't. It just doesn't have enough context for it to be, to be fully satisfying for me. Out of the endings, it's not the one it's not the one I hate the most or anything, but it is. I wanted more of that, and that's what we all thought the DLC would do.
Yeah,
like would be like, oh, we're going to go to Londor,
and possibly still could,
still could.
Yeah.
But those are the 4 endings. My issue with them is that they're not. It's not so much that they're inconclusive, but is that they're similar to things we've already done. Like even that Usurpation one is so clearly quoting the Age of Dark, Age of Man one from before, that all of this stuff feels like things we've seen. Like. In that one, you don't absorb the fire into yourself, but presumably going to rule the people of Londor means like very similar to an Age of Man. Like the fire is not, it's not strictly out; it's inside you, but that it's not out and about either. It's not the Age of Fire has ended in either case.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like these are all very similar to each other. They all end at very, very similar points. And it's, I'm fine with ambiguity. I like ambiguity where there's enough to extrapolate from.
Yeah. And ambiguity I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And like a common kind of, counter to that argument is that like, oh, the endings to the series have always been a little bit ambiguous. And like when they are, it's the first time they did it. So Dark Souls 1, I'm completely satisfied by the endings of Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
They're kind of ambiguous, but it makes a complete story. Like it's a whole ending.
Yeah. And remember what a hollow thud the Dark Souls 2 ending pre-patch was. Yeah.
100%. Like that's the other ending in the series I think is bad.
Yeah.
Like I like the Bloodborne endings, I like the Demon Souls endings. The Dark Souls 2 ending prior to Scholar was also bad.
Yeah.
And even that one at least was like a statement on like the futility of it, right? Like that one was like, it doesn't actually matter whether you link or unlink the fire because it's all going to happen again.
Yeah.
Like that ending still had a stronger sense of adding to the cosmology. Like it was unsatisfying, but narratively made more sense than this does.
Yeah.
To me. So it was bad, but it wasn't. It like there's a way to express that idea. It was like that felt like an intentional anticlimax to me.
Yeah.
These I find kind of shitty. Like it is just like which one did you what'd you get first? Have you done this more than once? Did you get what'd you get?
I got the to end the fire.
Okay,
that was my first one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, where you summon the firekeeper.
Yep.
Yeah, I just rekindled the first time because I knew I'd do it again, and just wanted to see if anything different would happen, which it kind of does, which I kind of appreciate. But the endings of this are not my fave thing.
Nope.
And then that's Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. Yeah, credits roll. Pretty credit song, and there's nothing new in New Game Plus except for some new rings in some places. Yep. But it's not. They don't do any kind of remixing or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Dark Souls 3, and that's the season for now.
Yeah. As of now, we'll come back with the DLC. We will come back with some specials and stuff like that are Souls related. Do the Bloodborne card game, probably do that Dark Souls board game when that comes out, do that terrible fucking comic. Like there's more Dark Souls content coming on the channel. Before we kind of talk in detail about this off season though, which I'm sure people want to know about, it's like it feels kind of superfluous to do like a roundup of the game since you've been doing it.
Yeah, and we a lot of it is stuff we've kind of reiterated over and over. Like there aren't an awful lot of disparate parts to kind of go after, and it's so weird. I never would have expected it to go this way. And when I was thinking about this, remember the anticipation, of the launch. I was a little bit doom and gloom about kind of just the way this would be received, right? I said, we're probably gearing up for like a Mass Effect 3 level, like community revolt against a conclusion, and I didn't expect to be on the side of people who were just kind of like bummed about this. And I can understand, like I take a little bit of exception when people say we whine, but we have to hit this, and over again it did the things that bothered us in a really just kind of unrepentant way. Almost. And it's a little bit of the hazard of the format, right? Dark Souls 1 was a game that was so good that we had to make a show about it.
Yeah.
Right? And, we signed ourselves up, at the very least for Dark Souls 1, and then we tried Demon Souls, and that was good. We were anticipating Dark Souls 2, and, that ended up working out just okay. And Bloodborne, God, when I was doing that migration to the new website and, like, re-entering all the Bloodborne info, Bloodborne is so good. But, like, we didn't sign ourselves up. I never really put myself in a state of mind where this kind of underwhelming, kind of like non-memorable thing would happen, and it would take up an entire year.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I'm as bummed as everybody, and I'll just repeat the same things kind of that we've been saying, which is we don't gain anything really by being negative about this. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't something that we're doing for attention. In fact, that hurts us. And I want to like this real bad. And there are things I like about this game mechanically that it's just not redeemed. And from the very start, I've been clear about what I am here at this series for. And this did not give me enough of that. And that's a real shame. In hindsight, I want to be kinder, but I just kind of can't. There are plenty of nice things to say. We said them, but it's overwhelmed by the other stuff.
Yeah. When people have accused us of whining, if we were not being kind to the game when we found it good, that would be a thing. Like, or if this was a ploy, we would just toe that line. And just shit on it constantly. But every episode we've done on the show, even for something as shitty as the Demon Ruins, like has contained positivity. Yeah. And it speaks to like every episode of the show, every area is mixed. And that adds up to me for the game being mixed, and something that like is a a critical philosophy or whatever, something I've always said, and it comes up in Watch Out for Fireballs more, is that like good doesn't erase bad. Like it's just good and bad exist next to each other. So like a game that is on the whole very, very good that has a shitty part, that shitty part is still worth considering and is still part of it, you know? So like on the whole, am I glad this exists? Yes. Mm-hmm. Have I had fun with it? Yes. Yep. Have I had fun with this season? Yes. You know, I'm glad that I played this. This is, you know, it's probably in my top 10, top 8 games for the year. Mm-hmm. You know, like I liked this game.
This has been a really good year for games.
Yeah. This is like in another year, this would be up there, you know. It's just, you know, a game like if something was going to be my least favorite Dark Souls game or Soulsborne game, I wanted that floor to be like Dark Souls 2, which is like something that, you know, I defend a lot. I really like Dark Souls 2. I wanted that to be the floor. Yeah. You know, but then we got to the floor and like the soul of Cinder got out a shovel and started digging, you know, and it was like, how can we make this? And the other thing that's I think worth noting too is like mechanically the game is very solid. The poise thing and the lack of build variety does bother me. But it's very solid. There are people who don't give a shit about anything that we care about in this game.
Yeah.
You know, there are people, I think that the fan reaction has been pretty mixed to this. It's not just us. So when I go online and look at things, like people, you know, are a little skeptical, but there are people who literally just like, there are people who only play for PvP, you know, and they, to them, like Bloodborne is not a great game because it's like the PvP is kind of shitty. Mm-hmm. No one does it, you know? So there are people who it's literally just how the game feels in their hands.
Yeah.
And for them, these incoherencies are not going to bother them.
Yeah.
But that's not, if Dark Souls 1 had come out, if this had been the first game in the series, you know, who knows whether Bonfireside Chat would have happened. Mm-hmm. You know, like if we didn't have that kind of that coherent, tantalizing, archaeology-like approach that we can take to this, would that have justified the show? Mm-hmm. You know, like probably, but it's a question, and I would not have thought that would have been a question. Every game so far has honored that premise. Yeah. And the premise of Bonfireside Chat as like as a entity, you know, or as an approach, a pursuit, right? Yeah, as an approach, as a pursuit worthy of pursuit. This is the first one where I'm like, man, you know, so many things that I want to like that should be tantalizing are not, you know, and it is a bummer, while simultaneously still being like a really good game and totally worth anyone's time. Mm-hmm. You know, it is a fun game. I had fun with it. I'm just, as opposed to being the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, I'm going to dedicate years of my life to it, mm-hmm. which is what Dark Souls was. It's more like, oh, I don't really need to play that again. Yeah. You know, it's become like a regular video game.
Yeah.
It's like the first entry in the series that is like a regular game.
Yeah.
You know, which is depressing. And if it depresses you listening to this, it depresses me more. So mm-hmm. take some pleasure in that, I guess. If you know, it is more hollowing for me mm-hmm. than it is. And there's probably smarter people than me could probably write, you know, a pretty comprehensive essay about how kind of the culture and the series as a whole has changed with this. Yeah. You know, because there's a lot of little comorbidities with this entry in the series where mm-hmm. like the market, you know, it's kind of a victim of its own bigness. You know, the marketing being a fucking nightmare joke.
Yeah,
now with its chicken wing shirts and
its slashy souls. Remember slashy souls?
Oh man, slashy souls. You know, chicken wing shirts, chicken wing challenges, and then you look at the fandom and the weird cottage industry and all the like super stretchy lore videos and stuff. Like this has had reverberations. It's not just affecting Bonfireside Chat,
right?
You know, and this is what it made me think of is like how different would this season be, or how different would this show be if Dark Souls set out and there were 5 games in the Soulsborne series, but there were no sequels. So it was like Dark Souls, you know, Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Giant Souls or Dragon Souls, mm-hmm. you know, Bloodborne, and then Cinder Souls or whatever. And there weren't connections really between them other than like a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, like a thematic thing.
Yeah, like thematic thing or some specifics. Like, mm-hmm. it's always, you know, it's always humanity because mm-hmm. that's these worlds, but there was no kind of direct plot.
Yeah.
So there would never be any kind of like, we would never have to try to square the circle and see how one thing impacts another.
Yeah. No, I mean, anything. Like on its face, that sounds like heaven, you know?
That would be really fantastic, you know? And there's a reason why people were so into Bloodborne is because it doesn't have that. They were disappointed in Dark Souls 2, which like, as much as I'm a Dark Souls 2 defender, I'll admit a lot of the problems in comparison exist there too.
Yes.
You know, like it didn't invite the comparison so strongly.
Mm-hmm.
But they were still there, so people were just like, yeah, man, let's get rid of this baggage. Bloodborne, fuck yeah. You know, and if they had all just done that and never, you know, and this just happens to be the entry that has the misfortune of being the one that invites comparison so directly and so strongly. And when I say misfortune, it's incredibly intentional by design, so it's really not misfortune at all.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, it's a bummer. Still looking forward to the DLC. Still glad I played it. Probably will not touch it after this. Like, I don't feel an urge to replay Dark Souls 3 the same way I can pretty much like replay most of the games in the series.
Yeah, I will always be down for lots of things. This might not be one of them. And I'm very happy that I have 2 characters right now that are kind of ready and raring to go.
For the DLC.
Yeah.
I'm happy that my characters have done the other DLC and are like really and done the game and are very high level. So just if the DLC is like, here's a 7-phase boss fight, like at the very least, we'll die in 2 hits instead of 1. You know.
Yeah.
I like recently before like kind of partway through the season, I replayed Demon Souls.
Oh yeah.
And it's still so good.
Yeah.
Like it's really good. It's really like compact and fun, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So it stood up in a way. It wasn't just, you know, it's not just being done with the Souls series. It's really kind of specific.
Yeah.
But you know, it is. There are lots of things it does well, and hopefully we did a good job of calling those out as well.
Yeah.
So. No.
That's all.
Yeah. That's the season for now. I mean, it's really not the season. There's going to be kind of asterisks and ellipses dotted throughout our off season. But let's talk about our off season.
Yes. So we have 4 games decided for the off season right now, and there are more. They're going to be coming. You know, like Neo is still hanging out there. You know,
Neo has a release date.
Yep.
Let It Die just came out.
Yeah.
Like we're in a weird rich period for Souls-like, so we can keep that going for a long time. I think the deciding factor as to when to end that won't be when we run out of Souls-likes. Mm-hmm. It will be when the games start borrowing kind of superficial elements.
Yes. And
not being worth like this is a game that has some kind of Dark Souls elements, but is not supporting our approach.
Right. Yeah. So there are 4 right now that we have on deck, and kind of in order if you're looking to prioritize them. First, we're going to be doing Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. This is the 4th Momodora game. I fired this up a couple days ago, Gary. This is a beautiful game.
It's one of my favorite games of last year. It's in my top 5. It's super pretty. It's really, really good. It feels very good. I appreciate the scope. The story stuff that's there is very cool. Mm-hmm. It's made by like one dude.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive and pretty and good.
Yeah, the pixel art and the animation are some real top tier stuff.
And it's another like kind of a chord in the Duckfeed anime accords, because it is anime as fuck, and I still love it.
Yeah, you play as a princess who attacks with a leaf.
Yeah, it couldn't be more like, you know, ridiculous anime, but it's so good. Yeah. So I love it.
Did I say princess or priestess? I'm
I
so
think you
tired.
said princess, but it's priestess.
Yeah. After that is Hyper Light Drifter. This is going to be a 2-part thing right now, is what we're looking at.
Yep. After that is going to be Dark Mouse.
Salt and Sanctuary.
Salt and Sanctuary, thank you. Which I think is probably going to be a 3-parter.
Yes.
There are a lot of bosses in Salt and Sanctuary. Mm-hmm. I'm really I played that before and didn't love it. I liked it but didn't love it, but I'm looking forward to playing it with a new build.
What did you play with to start on your first go?
Well, I did heavy weapons. I did my Dark Souls playthrough, light armor, huge fuck off weapon. Mm-hmm. And I want to mess around with magic and ranged stuff. Mm-hmm. The things that bothered me about it, and your opinion, I'm not trying to poison the chalice or whatever. Yeah. Is that these weird lack of there's some definitively cheap bullshit things that can happen, like getting hit on the ground, attacks coming from off screen. Like bosses can go off the screen and still attack you, and you can't get to them. There's some lack of polish that comes with a 2-person team. That it's still impressive, but negatively impacted my fun.
Yeah.
And especially near the end when they've ramped up the difficulty and it's this boss has just walked off the screen. Well, fuck me, and there's a couple moments like that where I got very, there's no way to telegraph weaknesses.
Yeah.
One pro tip I would give you is that if you're having a hard time with a boss, just look up the weakness, because there's none of the Dark Souls this is a dragon, so he's probably weak against lightning.
Yeah.
Enemies, they just hit the randomizer on the weaknesses. Yeah. So, Poisoned and fire. Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited. There's a lot of item description lore in this from what I played. So
the story stuff is actually badass.
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty cool, like I'm into the plot. So that will be a fun little mini season in and of itself.
Yeah. And then after that, we've got an episode on Dark Mouse.
Yes.
All of these are available on PC. I think there might be one or two that are on Mac
Hyperlight
as well.
Drifter is on PS4 too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, and
Salt is on.
Yes. So, really easy to get a hold of. Like we're going into this period of like trying out new indie game stuff, and like the barrier to entry for that is super low. So I hope that you kind of follow us along, kind of through, this kingdom that Dark Souls kind of inspired.
Yeah. We've done a followers, season before, but this is even stronger now.
Yeah.
Now it is becoming similar to like YouTube videos. It's becoming like a cottage industry kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's also in between there, because we are playing full games in this time. So like to prepare for this, I did a couple hours of like reading item descriptions and looking to see if anybody could convince me of, better kind of theories on the endings. And as well as played the final boss and played the areas, which is about an hour. So that's 3 hours of preparation I did for this episode. Salt and Sanctuary is like a 25-hour game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more preparation there, which means in this season, expect like some kind of specials peppered in, things like that to meet, literally to buy us time.
Yeah.
We want to stay weekly because we want that momentum. And it's not, when I say buy us time, they're not going to be bad.
No,
there'll be no bad episodes. Like we're not going to put out anything we don't think is good.
Right.
But if you're setting your watch by like, oh man, they were going to finish Salt and Sanctuary here, and instead there is a episode about the Dark Souls comic, that's why.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit ramshackled just so we can maintain playing a new game for each of these things.
Yeah. Effectively, what this is doing is it's doubling our Watch Out for Fireballs workload.
Yes, which is significant because that's already a significant workload. And let us know, if we hope you stick with us. Let us know, if you do. Like stay out there and stay vocal, because the future of the show, we've talked about, it's not going anywhere. At the very least, we have that DLC. We have a victory lap season planned at some point. From very well may release something they say is not a Dark Souls sequel, but is pretty much a Dark Souls sequel. There are things up there that kind of question marks, like tiny motes of fire that have appeared one day, that may end up rekindling kind of the traditional format of the show.
Right.
If that doesn't happen, we need to know that you're out there and if you are going to want to follow us if we did decide to tackle another series, things like that.
Yeah.
So I talked about that on Facebook a while back, but in case you're not on Facebook, ideas for that, thoughts about that, you can send them to us. And we want to do it as long as as long as you guys want to hear it.
Yeah.
We want to do it, period. But whether we keep it going as Bonfireside Chat or rebrand it or something like that will depend on kind of your participation and you kind of coming along with us.
Yeah.
So
willingness to follow.
Yeah. So let us know.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about it.
I think so. I would like to extend a special thanks to all of our guests who
absolutely.
who appeared. This has been a fantastic season for guests. Gary does the legwork in hooking that up. Thank you to all the listeners who have suggested people. One of the awesome perks about this show is getting to meet other people who are similarly passionate about this series, and universally they have all been delightful people that I'm happy to have encountered.
Yeah, we've been just throughout the entire series, like we've been so lucky.
Yeah.
In that respect. And that's been, I got to meet a lot of people who I admire quite a bit.
Yeah. And we thought about making our last guest an amalgamation of all of them.
But it would suck. Like you cannot capture Danielle Rando's character
right.
in a faceless, empty suit of armor. Who just kind of like read the show notes in a monotone. In
a monotone, but still somehow with her Rhode Island accent. Yeah.
So we decided not to go for the amalgamation route. And instead are just going to do a classy thank you, a tasteful thank you to everybody. So thanks very much. And if there are people who I see on Twitter every once in a while, someone will be like, hey, I loved you on the show. That's not only is that sweet, but it's also helpful to us.
Yes. So
if somebody was on the show and you liked them on here, let them know.
Yeah.
Because, we're not a huge fish in the pod pond, and having that kind of clout of being like, hey, do you want to come on this show that you never heard of?
Yeah.
That helps if our fans are their fans too.
Yeah.
And let's make that known,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you want to go back and listen to old episodes of the show, recently did a redesign of the site, moved it over to a new place. You can either find it the usual ways at Duckfeed.tv/bonfireside chat. We'll redirect to it. We now have a snazzy URL, and have for a little bit. It's bonfireside.chat. Yes, I sprung for the crazy URL, for the crazy TLD. But all of that's there, and everything is kind of tagged by season. Going to be adding in guests as well. So if you want to go in and see all of the times that that Jeremy has guested, you're going to see that as well. Might take a little bit of time to do that, but it's there.
Yeah, that will be stuff to look out for. So again, we're not going anywhere. We thank you for coming with us, and we really do appreciate it. Yeah. So until next time, what should they do, Cole?
Ratings, reviews, iTunes, Patreon, all that. But most of all, I don't know, watch for those motes of light.
Yeah, Humbasa.
Humbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon